Sweet. Cool. All right. I think we rolling on the record. So cool. Thanks for joining, guys. As you can see, I'm in my dope studio, ready to rock and roll. So hopefully you guys have had a chance, and if not, like maybe just do it afterwards. But yeah, you can download the trial version of Ableton, or if you've got a cracked version or whatever. This is Ableton 10 that we're going to be looking at today, so it's the latest version. But pretty much everything, like I doubt anyone's probably got lower than 9, and it's pretty similar in terms of. Oh, hey, we got Ben. What's up, bro? Cool, man. Yeah, what we're looking at is Ableton 10, but it's going to be pretty similar to Ableton 9 if that's what you've got and working with. But yeah, so I guess the purpose of this session, it's not really going to be in depth on anything in particular. What I want to try and do is just kind of give everybody.
That's not fair. This is my space.
I might just mute everybody just so everyone can hear. So yeah, so the purpose of this session really is just like obviously if you've got any interest in Ableton and ever opened it up before, it's like a pretty hectic looking like piece of software, and there's just a lot of shit that you probably don't really need to worry about if you're just kind of starting out with things. So yeah, today isn't really going to be going too deep into anything in particular. It's just going to be sort of like giving you a few tips on what some stuff is, where you kind of look for it, and how to like get a couple of pretty simple things going. Like maybe some people have done a bit in Ableton or other software programs, DAWs. A couple of you guys are DJs, so you kind of know a bit about music already. But yeah, this is really just kind of a 101 of Ableton. So I've just got everybody on mute at the moment, just so everyone can kind of hear what's going on. But yeah, happy to answer questions if we're going through. If something's not making sense, just feel free. I think if you just like go above your little picture or something, you can hit unmute. And yeah, I'll just try and answer your questions if I can. Again, I'm no Ableton expert, so if yo, what up, Kim?
Hey man.
Hey Tim, what's up?
Cool. Yeah, not much. Sorry, I just had an open inspection. So these.
No worries. Hey Kimmy, what up? So yeah, good. We just kicked off, so you guys hadn't really missed anything yet. You should be able to see my screen, hopefully, and I was just kind of giving an overview that don't really want to dive too deeply into anything. It's really just making the program a little bit less scary when you kind of open it up and just see a million things and not know where to start. I was just saying to the guys, I've got everybody on mute, so just if you want to ask a question or something, just unmute yourself and yeah, we'll get going. So cool. Well, you guys hopefully can see my screen. So I've opened this up. This is Ableton 10, very similar to Ableton 9 if you've got an older version. If you've just downloaded the trial or anything like that or opened it for the first time, you'll see like a bunch of shit going on here that you don't really need. Like on the right here, this is just like a little bit of like a tour and a little bit of like tutorials and stuff like that, but you don't really need that when you're working on stuff. So I can just kind of X that out. If you ever want to get back to that, at the view up the top here, you can open that up looking at the help view. Also, there's like this little thing here, the info view. So if I put my cursor over anything, it'll sort of give me a bit of a definition about sort of what's going on there. I kind of feel that guy's a little bit annoying for me, but so I'll just kind of turn that back off as well. So yeah, this view menu here sort of gives you everything that you kind of need to see in the different windows. So you can sort of, if you accidentally, I think there's even like a go to default or something like that, if you accidentally like close a bunch of shit and you don't know where it's come from. But generally when you open up Ableton, there'll be like that little help window thing and the thing down there, and then everything else that you kind of see on the screen here we'll probably talk to at some point. So I think this kind of setup kind of works well. So Firstly, just to give you a little bit of navigation around what's happening here. So we've got this left-hand side here, which is basically like your library. So if you like use this little guy here, this triangle that expands and closes it. Once you start like getting a bunch of tracks across here, you might need the real estate on your screen, so you can kind of close that down. And yeah, essentially here you can kind of search through all the different categories. So these are sounds. So basically, all these are samples or they're MIDI devices. Specifically, these are drum kits or instruments. So these are built into Ableton. Audio effects, MIDI effects, Max for Live. Don't worry about too much now. This is kind of, it's like a developer platform. So people that have built their own plugins can sort of upload them, and you can buy some, and there's heaps on there for free as well. But I think getting started, probably the less you work with initially, the better. Because if you have, for example, like 4,000 kick samples, like you're never getting anything done because you're just going to be like auditioning kick samples all day. But if you've got like 10 to choose from, you'll be like, yep, this one sounds good, and kind of move on. I know I've definitely got into that trap before. Like someone's given me a hard drive with samples on it, and I've just gone, yeah, this is sick. And then you like sit there just wasting your time going through samples rather than actually making music. So I think less is more. So the next one is plugins. So this is if you've bought like a third-party plugin. So if I look here, I've got like this one for Scion. It's like a TB303 like acid kind of synth. But yeah, you can get different plugins and stuff, install them, and then they'll basically be in that menu there. So clips. So these are all basically from the Ableton library, or you can upload your own ones as well. So clips are basically just little loops that have come with Ableton that you can kind of click and drag into a track and kind of change around whatever you need. And then samples. So these are basically like a one-shot sample. So if I like audition this one, like this is like a, oh, I don't know what this is. Maybe this is a track that I've got in my hard drive somewhere. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically just a little sample. I can like bring that into a track, and yeah, if you scroll through the list here, you can basically audition things just by scrolling through. So that's just like a super quick little intro to this thing here. Probably the best thing to do rather than scroll through tons and tons of menus. You can search up the top here. So say I want like an 808 kit or something like that. Then I can either select the drum category, or I can look at all results. So then I can look at anything that's got an 808 kit, and that's kind of refines that down. So that's kind of the library and searching. So the other thing that I'll just kind of show you is the preferences up the top here. So when you first start up, you may get a message saying that there's no audio output device selected. So basically, this is telling Ableton where to route the sound from the program. So if you're using like monitors and you've got a sound card, then like the sound card will come up in the list. If you're just using, say, your laptop speakers, for this one, obviously I'm using the Zoom audio output, so you guys can hear what I'm doing as well. Or if you've got headphones plugged in, you just need to select external headphones. So if you're not getting any sound, if you go to Live, Preferences, Audio, and then make sure that audio output device is selected. So that's probably number one thing. Number two thing, and this is just like my preferences, but let me have a look. Where is it? So look and feel, particularly in Ableton Live 9, it's like the default skin is really shitty. So that's kind of what it looks like, and it just sort of looks cheap and hurts my eyes. Or there's like this one, which is even worse. So I just like this one personally, like this mid-dark skin. So that's under look and feel. So set up your audio output and then choose a skin that doesn't hurt your eyes, because for whatever reason, the default looks really shitty. Yeah. Whoa, Jesse, what up, dude?
Oh yeah.
Good, bro. Yeah.
Sorry I'm late.
All good, dude. I'm sure you've got a note from your mum or something.
I did. Yeah.
Cool, bro. All right, I'm just going to chuck you on mute, but unmute if you want to ask questions and stuff. Cool. Cool. So that's like basic setup. There's a bunch of different things in here that you don't really need right now, like sample size and buffer, like bit rate and things like that for recording out and stuff. Or if you do have like an external MIDI controller, this is where you would set it up. So I'll kind of go through how you can just use your laptop keyboard or your whatever normal keyboard to do a bunch of stuff. It's definitely going to be limiting, and you're going to, if you want to start making some beats and stuff, I'd recommend getting at least like a MIDI keyboard or like a little drum pad, or like I use a Ableton Push 2, so it's kind of already mapped and everything. So you can see here that Push 2 is in my list, but there's like a shitload of other ones that have some auto mapping parameters. And what that is basically MIDI mapping things in Ableton into your device. So like if you hit a certain key on your external hardware, like MIDI keyboard, that'll do something like in the program. So there's sort of like auto mapped ones from the list here, or you can sort of manually map. So if I go up to MIDI up the top here, everything goes blue, and then I can select. So say I want to hit this send A, and then map that to like a knob on my external. So like, oh, I'm not going to get it up, but I've got like an external keyboard down there, like a MIDI keyboard that has some knobs on it, so you can like map a parameter there, and then you just basically turn that knob or touch that button, and then it will map whatever you've just clicked into that device. So that can be pretty cool. And obviously making music is more fun when you're hands-on. It's basically like if you're trying to DJ with a piece of software and a mouse, like that kind of sucks. So obviously it's a lot more fun to have some hands-on stuff. And afterwards I'll post a couple of links into the Facebook thing about a couple of good MIDI pieces of hardware. Obviously you can get like external synths and get pretty crazy down the line, but I think starting out, you know, keep it simple as possible. And also just on, if you are thinking about buying a piece of MIDI hardware, like you can probably get like something decent for like $200, or maybe even on like Marketplace or whatever. There's tons of secondhand shit. And a lot of ones actually come with like an Ableton intro license as well. So the trial that I posted in the group, I think it's about $1,000 to buy the full version, because it's got some more features and it's got a bigger library and stuff like that. But the intro version you can get for free with a lot of stuff that you can buy for around $200 or something. And I think that version is about 150 or 130 bucks anyway. So if you're thinking of buying the intro version, probably just spend an extra 50 or 70 bucks and get a MIDI hardware device, because it'll be more fun and you get the license for free as well, basically. So cool. So any questions so far? I'll just pause for a sec. Everyone's looking okay. Cool. Yep, good. Thumbs up, thumbs up. Sweet. Cool. So that's a little bit of basic navigation. So the next kind of things that I want to sort of show you is, so this window here that we're looking at, this is called the arrangement view. So it actually makes a lot of sense. I don't know if the little logo for live is here, but like the logo for live is like little things this way and little things this way. And at first I was like, oh yeah, that's kind of cool. But it actually relates to the two different ways to work within Ableton. So this is the session view basically, and this is kind of how I work, and maybe everybody's a bit different, but I'll kind of work through here, build up. So these are basically all my different channels. So when you open up Ableton for the first time, you'll see something similar to me. Like you won't see these two here because these are some stuff I've prepared for this session, but you'll have 2 audio channels and 2 MIDI channels as the default. And so the difference between these two is the types of files that you can actually put on the channel. So if I click on any of these channels, you'll see that there's like nothing really going on. Like if I open this one up and double click on this one, you'll see that this is like an external plugin that I've put in. I've got some MIDI notes down here, and if I play that, then you'll like see that that's got a little clip, and that's playing a little bass line that I've kind of made. So that's a MIDI channel. So the difference between audio and MIDI, so MIDI is basically like it's bits of information or like digital notes that get sent to like a digital instrument, basically. So if I double click on this, I've now made a clip. So this is called a clip down here, and basically I can put that to loop or not to loop. And these are like notes on a keyboard. So if I go into sounds and look at bass, and say, for example, I want this one. So basically just click and drag or double click. And now that's actually put this MIDI instrument onto my MIDI track. So if I open up my clip here and press play, then I can just go, whoops, it's soloed. So I can go. So I'm basically just writing some MIDI notes there. So you don't actually need to really know music, or you don't need to, you can just kind of like pencil these in. So that's kind of like writing with MIDI. So audio, on the other hand, this actually takes like samples. So if you have an external clip, so if, for example, if I try and click and drag that same bass onto here, it'll give me like a little error down the bottom and saying only audio effects or audio can be placed here. But if I go down to samples, for example, because these are actually, so this like little kick drum thing here, I can actually put that there because it's an audio wave file. So you can see how when I look at this here, this is basically just the data that I'm sending to this instrument here in my instrument rack to kind of basically say, this note should sound like this, and the computer kind of works it out to sound like that. This one here is actually just a wave file. So if you ever used like CDJs or something like that, you see the wave file come up of the track. So then if I want to actually play this, then you can see that that's if I zoom in here, you can see that's the waveform kind of moving through. I can kind of skip through. Yeah, so that's kind of the fundamentals, and we'll kind of go a little bit deeper into like sampling from audio sources and stuff like that. But I just wanted to give you guys kind of a super basic understanding of, what is a MIDI track and what is an audio track. And if you need to create new ones, you can do that with a keyboard shortcut. So if you do Command T, then that will create a new audio track. Or if you do Shift Command T, that'll create a new MIDI track. So just depending on kind of what you're trying to do or what kind of instrument you're actually trying to use depends on if you want to use an audio or if you want to use a MIDI track. When you're getting started, it's probably a lot easier to use a MIDI tracks to start with, because you can essentially just go through this list here, pull in a bunch of MIDI instruments and kind of get something going like pretty quickly. And it's super easy. So with audio, you might want to like chop up like a vocal sample, or you might actually sample like a kick drum from another track or something like that. And that's probably where it starts to get a little bit more complicated. So I think probably starting with MIDI tracks is probably going to be the easiest. So this is basically a clip here. So in the session view, we've got the idea of clips and also scenes. So if I open, that was hectic. So if I open this up here, I think I accidentally deleted that. Let me just reopen. So, oh no, it was there. Anyway, that'll open back up in a sec. So I'll kind of show you what like a clip. So these are basically all clips that we've got through here. And then a scene basically is kind of like the whole row. So these on the right-hand side here, when we look at the master, that's a scene. Then this is the next scene. So essentially, like this is a just a clip itself. And you can see here that I've got a little pencil. So the pencil means I can just kind of like click anywhere, and that'll put like a note within the grid here. And that's toggled up the top here. I think it's like can't remember what the shortcut is, but if you just click that, when it's highlighted yellow, you'll have the little pencil, or if you don't have the pencil, if you just double click, then that'll basically put like a MIDI note within any of these places. And you can see here that this is a grid that I'm working with, and you can see if I zoom out a little bit, if I extend this, so you can see here this full number here is number 2. Basically, that's like the second bar. So that's where the second bar starts. So by default, and I think you can change it in your preferences, but by default, when you create a new clip, it'll just create like 1 bar. So if we're talking about like electronic music, it's generally going to be in 4/4. So that basically means 4 beats to a bar. So you can see here that these blocks are actually broken down. So I've got beat 1 to here, beat 2, beat 3, and then beat 4, and then that's the next bar. And you can see here that I've got this little bracket loop that I'm dragging across here. So if I just drag it here, then that's going to just loop half a bar. If I drag it all the way here, that's going to do a whole bar. And if I do it just here, that's going to just loop 1 beat within that bar. And the other thing you can see here, maybe a little bit hard to see, but you can see that each of these beats is actually broken down into 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the ride's going to be hectic, so I won't play that. But if I move that down here and put 4 kick drums in the first beat, these are all going to be quarter notes. So basically, each beat is broken down even further into quarters here. So if I play this, it'll be like, so that's like, and then that'll just kind of loop on that. And that's just looping on that, the quarter notes. So you can see basically, this is actually like snapping. So basically, you can have the grid snap to the beats that you've actually put in here. So by default, I think it is quarter notes, but if you right click here, you can change this. So say I want it to be, 16ths, or so now if I fill out a whole bar and then I play that, you'll kind of hear the difference. So like, it's actually broken that down further. But I mean, most stuff, just kind of keeping it simple, like quarter notes are great. And then 4 beats to a bar, 4 notes to a beat, keeps it pretty simple. So if I kind of use this, so I'll just kind of show you how quickly using, so this is a kit, I don't know what kit, maybe I made this kit. Oh, it's like a 909 kit that I've kind of put together. So I'll change this back to quarter notes, and using this pencil, I can just super quickly just pencil in a couple of notes, kind of loop that, and then maybe like throw a clap in there, throw in a couple of, and then you can just basically like have that looping, and you can just kind of build that out, and then so it's like, it's super easy to get something that sounds kind of cool, and you can basically just have your headphones on so it's not pissing off anyone else, and just kind of loop that around and just make something really cool, and just something that sounds good. Like if you highlight all of this and then hold down Command and then D, or Apple D, then that's actually like doubled my clip. So I've just made that from 1 bar. This is now 2, but if I play this, you'll see that that's only looping that first bar because I've got the loop bracket here. And if I change that, that's just gonna loop there. But if I change that to the second bar, I can actually, like put in a couple of notes here. And then now it kind of like changes it up a little bit. So you can kind of start with something simple, loop that, like duplicate it a couple of times, and then just kind of put a few things in there that are gonna spice it up a little bit. Okay, so that's kind of making a little clip. Is that sort of making sense to everybody? Any questions? Cool. And so the other thing with clips that's really cool, and what I often do is when I'm that's why I really like working in this session view, because you can just kind of click and drag and move stuff around, and you kind of are like putting together a track. So these are all tracks, but then the full track kind of goes to the master track here as the output. and say I want to start this off. So I've just basically copied and pasted this second clip. So if I go back in here and go, all right, I'm going to delete. So I've just clicked on the end here on this little piano roll. That's highlighted the whole roll. Highlighted that, deleted those hi-hats. And then if I want to kind of go through here and go, okay. And then now the second version has no hi-hats. And so you can kind of like, just kind of build up a little track and kind of have variations of the one clip that you've got. So that's kind of how I start building out some tracks. And then once you've got a few, like I have down here, what you can actually do is sort of build out sort of sections of a track using the scenes. So these scenes are like these little end numbers. You can also insert a scene with like Control I, or you can like click and drag and move these scenes around. Like similar, you can kind of move kind of these things around here. So like you can launch a bunch of clips at the same time using scenes, and you'll actually see when this is actually quantized. So so basically that means that it's always going to be snapping to, I've got the setting up here to 1 bar. So even if I click the next scene a little bit early before it's come in, Ableton will wait until the next bar starts to actually change to the next scene. And that's the same with these clips as well. So if you like listen here, like, so I've clicked it, and then it's like, it's coming in on time. So this is really handy for if you're like recording, or if anyone's like playing live or anything like that. Like this is something similar, not exactly, because they'd probably have stems. So you could build a stem, which is kind of like a section of a tune, and you'd build it out like that. But when they're like, you know, when you're playing live on stage or whatever, when you're triggering stuff, Ableton kind of does the hard work for you to make sure that everything sort of stays in time. So that's kind of, yeah, having like quantize. So you can change this to like, you know, a quarter note or 8 bars or whatever. But I find like, I think 1 bar is the default, and that kind of tends to work pretty well. So I'll just show you launching a scene here. So this is like a little first section, and I'll be like, okay. And then I'll go, oh, I'm kind of working this, but I want to chuck in, see what this sounds like, this vocal. And then maybe I've got like a hi-hat somewhere else that I'm working on. So you can kind of, like those variations that I was kind of talking about, you can sort of launch some stuff and then go, let's see this kick, what does that pattern sound like? Or actually, I've got this over here. So what I find really cool about Ableton is once you create a couple of clips, you can sort of jam out with yourself and sort of sit there and try different things. And then you might go, oh, actually, yeah, that works there. I'm going to move it up here. Or like, oh, that sucks, I'm going to delete that. Or so you can, so I would sort of say like, you know, if you just sort of take some time to find some good sounds, make a couple of different tracks in here, and then sort of work on a couple of different variations, you know, try different sounds with different combinations, and you can really get pretty creative and kind of play around. And you sort of like, you know, this didn't take super long to put together. You know, if you just make a couple of variations and kind of build your track out this way, then that can be like super fun to kind of muck around with. So that's kind of like the one view there. And the other view, well, I'll maybe just show you a couple of other things before we move on this page. So I sort of talked about, this is the quantize setting here. This is a metronome. So if you're recording anything live, you can like stick on this metronome. So when I like play something, you have the little clicking, which is pretty annoying normally, but if you need something to be in time, that's a good one to have. Up here, this is your tempo. So the default, I think, starts at 120, but then you can just like type it in or just kind of slide that guy up. So if I move this up to like 150 and then play what I was just playing, like, so it automatically speeds everything up without like warping the sound or anything. So I'll put that back down. So the other things up here that we're kind of looking at, so these are called the transport controls. So you've got like your play, stop, and this is your record button. And there's a few other things here, but don't need to worry about them too much. So this one up here, basically, I don't know, there's probably a proper name for it, but I'm not sure what it's called. But this kind of like stops what's currently playing. So I can be like, okay, stop. But if I press play again, it's gonna kind of play all of the clips that I had playing and highlighted. And you can see here that they've all got a little green arrow on them. If I actually want to kill everything that's currently playing, you've got to actually press this master stop down here in the right hand. So currently if I press play, it's all highlighted. If I press this master guy and then press play, then nothing plays. So sometimes like you can sort of go nuts and you're like, why does it keep playing? So you got to make sure you hit this master down the bottom here. Otherwise the clips that are highlighted are going to continue to play. And that's kind of the same for like launching clips. So say for example, like I'm playing here, and then I actually want to drop the drums or the kick drum out, then I can actually press stop down here, or click in any of these other empty cells, and then that on the next bar will actually stop that particular track. And then you can kind of bring it back in. So once you kind of like get a few bits and pieces down, it's actually pretty fun because you're sort of like DJing, but you can control like every element of the track rather than just the track or just like the mids, highs and lows. So you can sort of like take in and out certain things, add effects and stuff like that. So that's kind of super fun to work on. I had some kind of notes and stuff down here, but maybe I'm like going all over the shop. Kind of looked at search. Cool. So the other view, so I'll kind of come back to this view because there's a few other things that I want to sort of cover off. But so remember, this was one kind of view that I was talking about. There's also a second view. So this is called your session view, because I guess you're like working on a session or playing live or just having a sesh. But if you hit tab, this will actually take you to what's called the arrangement view. So this is probably, if anyone's worked in any other DAWs before, it's probably similar to what you've kind of seen in like more a linear kind of vibe. So some people actually do all their production and sort of sequencing and stuff. They don't even really fuck around with this stuff here, but just how my brain works, it makes more sense to kind of build a bunch of clips up, kind of make a little jigsaw puzzle, trial them, kind of make a semi order and get a little bit of an idea about what I want to do or where I want the track to go before I do any arranging of the track. So this is kind of my like kind of your play zone, and you get stuff sounding kind of cool. And then I kind of tab over here to sort of look at arranging the tune. So so what you can do is you can like drop stuff like directly onto say like a MIDI track here, and that's going to like put that in here, and I can come in here and write something. I don't know what that's going to sound like, but yeah, basically I could just like write my track directly in here. So I can be like, all right, I want 16 bars. So if I sort of zoom in, I can say like, all right, I want this guy to go for 16, 15, 16. And then there's just going to be a bunch of random shit. And then that's just going to, so you can kind of build out a track in a similar way to what I was showing you. But for my brain, it just works better to kind of do it this way. And then when you're sort of semi-happy with the arrangement, then sort of go into the arrangement view here. And how I generally do it is, so I'll open this up and say I'm like happy with this 4/4 kick, then I'll actually just kind of like click and drag the kick. So make sure it's on the right channel and kind of fuck myself up. But let me just zoom back out. So basically I've like, okay, cool. I want to start with the kick drum and I want it to go, so currently that only goes to there. But if I drag this, you can see, you kind of have to look closely, but you can see these little indents in the actual MIDI there. And that's where the track is kind of repeating itself. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually extending that clip that I've got and say, cool, I want that to go 16. Let me see like, actually at 8, I want these toms to come in, and then the vocal can come in there as well, and I want that to continue to loop. So you can see here that like if I expand this here, that's the same MIDI notes that I have in my clip, but this just kind of allows me to sort of see it on that linear sort of progression. So like if I start this here, and then I can zoom forward. Oh, whoops, I put them on the wrong track. That's why it sounds weird. So what do I want? The vocal here, and I think this is tom. Yeah, that should work now.
Daughter of the Nile, daughter of the Nile.
Okay, probably the wrong spots because it's out of time. But basically, you kind of hopefully get the point of what this view is kind of good for. And the other one I find is sort of better for your creation, and then this is better for sort of the arrangement, thus the name arrangement view. Cool. Any questions on that, or is that sort of making sense? Thumbs up. Cool. Everyone's super quiet. All right. Hello. Hello. Cool.
Because you muted me, motherfucker.
Oh, you're too kind. Cool. So yeah, that's like basically like one way to work. The other thing is if you are wanting to like work on a particular track, something, so you can see down here, I've got this little red boy. It's like basically this means like the track is armed. So then you can actually like record something or like work on that. I think we got a chat. What's going on in the chat? So good. Keep going. Yay. Thanks, Kim. Awesome. So yeah, basically you can see here, once I've armed this acid meltdown, that's a pretty cool name. Once that's armed, you can see that the square actually turns to a little circle. So that means it's like a record ready sort of button. So if I click on this, I think this will give me a 1 bar count in, and then it will actually be recording anything I do. So this is going to sound really shitty, but I'm going to try and record something live. So you can see here that little pencil that I was talking about where you can just kind of draw in the notes. But I'm going to embarrass myself and try and play something on the little keyboard using my keyboard. So if I hit this little keyboard guy at the top, this has now activated my computer's keyboard. So if you don't have an external MIDI controller, then you can actually still sort of play like the piano like this. So I think the notes are like A, W, S, E, D, R, F, G. So like if I play those, like, et cetera, et cetera. And if you press like, for example, I think it's Z, that will go down an octave. If I press Q, that doesn't do anything. I don't know. I can't remember what going back up is, but yeah, you can kind of work that one out later if you want to use it. Or X maybe? Yeah, so X, so Z goes down, X goes up. Who's hassling me in the chat again? Acid fat. Oh, so good. All right, so, and the other thing is, when I'm kind of playing stuff with a MIDI controller or your keyboard, I'm doing my acid fart down here, but say I arm this track, you can see that it's kind of saying, I want to be playing this, but I don't have any devices on this. So if I click here and see the device down here, I actually really hate that sound. So let's put some, that sounds a little bit better. So you can see that I'm playing this guy over here because this is armed, but nothing's on there. And so now that's armed. And so if I want to record something, I hit this little recorder, it'll give me a count in, and then it will basically be recording anything that I play rather than drawing it in. So I'll embarrass myself here and try and do a little bass. So that was real shit, but you kind of get the idea. So you can see here, and we've got that grid kind of vibe that I was talking about before. And you can see that because I'm not an expert keyboard player on my computer, that everything's off the grid a little bit. But what you can actually do is Ableton makes it super easy. You can quantize what you're doing, or like right click and then quantize, or do like Command U, and you can set the quantize settings. So I want to go to the 8th notes because I've got my grid set at 8th notes, and it's going to change it. It's going to quantize 100%. So that means it's going to be 100% on the grid. You can like, it is kind of cool to have a little bit of like human feel to your tunes. Like if you've got some drums and stuff that you're programming that everything is exactly on the grid, it's going to sound pretty robotic and kind of like a loop. So sometimes it can be kind of cool to have things a little bit one way or the
9%.
other. What's going on there? So sometimes it can be, yeah, cool to have things just like a little bit off. But I'll just leave it here for the demonstration purposes. So just highlight everything, Control U. That didn't work. So why is that not working? I swear it does, but I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But yeah, anyway, this should, oh yeah, it's the start, sorry, not the end. So maybe I actually was not too bad at playing in time, but let's just move this. So that's going to want to snap to that grid. So you can actually say, I think oh yeah, grid off. So you can see here now, I can kind of move this and it's not snapping to anything. But then I put it back on and then I highlight this note and quantize, and you see that that sort of shifted. So that's now on that second beat. Yeah. So like, for example, like if anyone's into like Burial's tunes, like his stuff is pretty hard to DJ because he doesn't use like Ableton. He uses some shitty program called SoundForge, where he basically just gets the waveforms and kind of lines them up. So nothing is perfectly in time. So a lot of his tunes are quite like off kilter or a little swingy. So if you're trying to mix that with another track that's sort of perfectly on the beat, it's going to sound a bit out of time and it's going to be hard to mix, but his tunes sound pretty dope. So yeah, cool. So that's kind of like playing things in. And again, like this is another reason why it's cool to have like an external MIDI keyboard or something, because it's a lot more fun to play in a tune or make a drum beat rather than kind of drawing it in and getting kind of pretty hands-on. Cool. So we got that guy, and we'll take that out. So, oh, freaking out. All right, so a couple more things to sort of show you now. So these are the, I think it's called the I/O menu. So if you kind of look over here, so inputs, outputs, we actually don't need to worry about this too much. This is kind of like how you can route audio from say like an external synth, or you can actually route one track to another track. So you can send basically the signal from one track into another track and do parallel compression and put effects on and stuff, which like is pretty hectic, and I don't actually do too much of that either. But basically you can see all of these are routed to, so this is my thing's called like demo or whatever it's called. So this is all routed to the master. So you can see here that these are all my individual channels. So these are all like, this is my vocal kick, this is some like little starter pad. Oh yeah, and this is another cool thing. So if I click this little S down here, which is above that arm, that now solos this. So if I even like click on a bunch of other stuff, all I'm hearing is just this pad, unsolo. So then, yeah, and let's stop that. So that's like the solo thing. This just basically, these little numbers, if you turn them off, that turns off the channel. So it's kind of in the same way as like soloing, but the opposite. So it's just kind of taking that one channel out. the next thing here, so this is the pan. So this will be, so like, let me just take a
Daughter of the Nile, daughter of the
Let me
Nile.
just do maybe this one. So I don't know if you guys have got headphones on or not, but you should be able to hear the tracks panning to the left and right in the headphones. Or if I have it sitting in the middle, then it's kind of equally distributed. So the next thing here, so these are the sends. So you've got, by default, I'll just open them up. You've got these two. So these are your return tracks. So basically, these are kind of like a master effects track. So I've got a reverb, which is, this is just the default reverb that opens up. I've also got a delay, which kind of looks like that. So maybe I'll just make like something, just a new track here, just to demonstrate these. Clean. There we go. Okay, so just pulling in. So I'm just basically clicking and dropping this 909 kit into the free space here, and that just automatically creates me a new track here. So I'm going to double click, make a little clip, and then I want to make some percussion. So I'll turn this on, and I might just, let's just simplify this, get rid of everything else. So basically now that's just my, I'll turn it down a little bit so you guys can hear me talk. So I've basically got that little drum kick going, and then here, let's see, oh, that one sucks. So just very generic little housey kind of, and then maybe like a, okay. So I've got, this is my percussion here. So oftentimes, so now I'm kind of going to be looking at some effects. So like reverb and delay, which is probably the main two effects that most people kind of use, and the ones that I kind of use the most. So the default reverb sits here, and the delay sits here. So these are kind of set up with their own parameters. So down here, you've got your devices and effects. So I could actually have, so what I could do is actually directly drop a delay. So I can search in here and go delay, see all results. So click and drag, and then this is basically like a chain. So it works from left to right. So this is, and then over here in theory is kind of my output. So the signal starts over here, moves from left to right. So I've got my 909 kit, and then I've got my delay, and then I've got my output here. So if the delay, so you see here, it won't actually let me put the delay in front of this because there has to be a signal that goes through the kit into the effects and then to the output. So if the delay sat before the kit in the chain here, then the delay wouldn't actually affect the kit because everything goes kind of left to right. So I can actually put effects directly on my channel here. But what I kind of want to talk about is actually using the send. So a send is kind of used when you've got like, say, like a master reverb and a master delay. And that means you don't have to put the effects on every single channel. And I mean, at this stage, it's probably not too much of a concern, but all these things basically take up energy or like your RAM basically from your computer. So if you've got like a shitload of instruments, some plugins, a bunch of effects, and a lot of tracks up here, then like your computer, if it's a little bit older, can kind of freak out and stuff. Or if you're playing like a live set or something, like it can freeze up your computer. So like send and returns are kind of used. So you can just have like one of those effects units, and you can basically send the signal. So this is, because it's all kind of in a computer and MIDI and stuff, there's not really a signal, but it's like a digital signal that's being sent from a channel. So think about if this was an actual synthesizer. So the signal from the output from that is being sent to like a reverb unit. And this is like, you know, having like a guitar pedal or like an actual rack unit. This is sort of mimicked in digital form in Ableton. So if you kind of think about it like that, like think about the signal going out from the like say it's a drum machine to like an effects unit. So that's kind of what's happening. And we've got two dials here. So we've got to send A and B. So A is our reverb by default, and B is the delay. So now just stop this here. So you can just hear that percussion. So you can see that's the clean signal. So there's no sends or returns here. But as I kind of dial in, so you can actually hear the reverb being affected on that channel. And so that's basically just saying like how much of the signal is actually being sent to the effects unit. So if we want to make any changes to the actual effect itself, that all kind of, so you can see here, this is dry wet. So if I have, so wet basically means like full signal effect processor is happening. And if it's more dry, then it's only kind of happening a little bit. Basically anything that sits on your send channel should really be at 100%. And I mean, maybe this isn't gospel, but basically you're controlling how much is affected by the send. And on the actual return track, so this is what's being returned here in the signal, you kind of want that to be 100 because it'll still work if I dial this down. But if I dial this down and then dial this all the way up, you can see it still works, but like if I dial that down, you can sort of see the difference there. So I generally think it's best to have everything at 100, and then you can actually just sort of like moderate it with this one here. So that's our reverb. So then we'll look at the delay. So this is our delay. We've got it in triplets. So basically I'll like, so you can hear there that there's now like a delay or like an echo to my track. And so if I kind of combine the two, so it's like, it's kind of got a bit of a groove now because it's not quite like that sort of robotic kind of human sort of sounding. So I might kind of dial it back a little bit, but then I'll maybe like open that kick back up. So you can kind of see like using, reverb and delays, like super easy to get something that sounds pretty straight and boring to have like a bit of a groove to it. So I would always kind of go moderate on particularly the delay, because if you've got delay and reverb on every single track and it's cranked up heaps, then you end up getting a really muddy track. And this kind of is kind of way down the line when you're thinking about like mixing tracks and stuff like that. So effects, don't really worry about too much at the moment. Like just kind of have a bit of fun and make some like little loops and stuff, but that's just something that's good to know. And like, I'll kind of show you exactly what I just did there, but actually just using it directly on the track. So if I click and drag this here, I can, and this by default will come back as, so this is the feedback. So this is how much the sound kind of comes back again. So you can see like, so it's like kind of going pretty nuts. So I probably want to dial that down quite a bit. So I kind of want to dial that, so it's not too much, and then kind of how much this is actually affecting it. So that's like, it's fully in triplets, so I probably want to actually pull that back a little bit. And then I can change this to say like, so these are triplets, or I can put it to like singles. So you can actually hear that's like repeating a single beat, or like, and that's 2 or 4. So yeah, you can kind of just like muck around with that. But yeah, I think like if you're going to start mucking around with effects and stuff, like the delay, or if you've got Ableton 9, I think it's just called simple delay, delay and reverb, which can be kind of sent on these two master channels by default. So you don't even have to pull anything out. Those two are like really fun to sort of start experimenting with kind of lightly, because too much is going to create kind of a shitstorm with your track. But yeah, what else? Cool. So any questions there, or anything on the screen that looks weird that you want me to talk to? More thumbs up. Awesome. what else do they have? So we talked about creating a clip. Well, got some chat here. What's going on? Oh, what's this? Cool. Okay. Okay. Cool. I can't read your message, Adam, so I'll read it later. But I think you just sent it just to me. But yeah, yeah, happy to talk more about any of this kind of stuff. Let me just go through this. Working, creating a scene.
Peace.
Oh, you out? All right.
Yeah,
Peace.
yeah, I gotta go eat dinner. Love
No
you
worries,
guys.
bro.
See ya.
Peace, bro. So grid quantization, recording
Learn
live.
how to exit.
Just close the window, bro. So then the other thing that I haven't really talked about. So the other thing is velocity. So at the moment, if I play this little scene, you can hear that like, let's turn the delay off. So you can basically hear everything is sort of running at exactly the same velocity. So the kind of how hard you're hitting the drum basically in this. So I actually kind of go, I'm highlighting everything. If I hold Command or the little, I don't know what it's called, the Apple guy, you see that my little cursor turns sideways and I can pull it down. And you can see down the bottom here, these are actually my little velocity marks. And you can see that the clap is still at full velocity, but my hi-hats have actually come down. You can kind of do that note by note as well. So I can kind of do that. So this can be kind of cool when you've got like maybe like a little accent. So I want to. So you can kind of like, even though it's on the grid, it's kind of giving it a little bit of a groove because the velocity is changing a little bit. So in a way, if you kind of think about this, it's like, say you're playing like a drum kit and you're like, so this clap, for example, so say we move it to, the snare is going to deafen your ears. But so say you're playing and you're hitting the snare as hard as you can, then that's going to be at full velocity, which is 127. So the scale is 1 to 127. I don't know why, but basically full velocity is 127. And then if say I knock this down to velocity of like, I don't know, what is it, 60 something, that's like you're hitting the snare half as hard as you can. So that's kind of how velocity kind of works. And that's another thing. So some of those effects that I was kind of talking about, or also velocity on notes, can give a pretty simple pattern, like a little bit more of a groove and a bit more of feeling. So that's another thing. Kind of talked about adding effects. Oh yeah, so we'll talk about some of the device parameters. And this is kind of getting a little bit more advanced, I guess, but basically you can sort of affect anything that you pull out of like these standard kits and things. I might just get something that is like super basic. Let me see. Sounds. Okay, so this analog bass. So this is one of the instruments and this is a preset. Actually, that's not a good one for an example. So that looks like. Oh, these are all real tech. Maybe I'll just get a kit and I'll just show you how to kind of change some of the sounds. Cool. So when I open this up, when I double click on the actual channel here, you can see that this opens. So this is my kit here. And I think there's some way you can kind of minimize these as well and stuff like that. And you can also group stuff. So if you highlight, so for example, up here, I've got my demo track. I've highlighted all of these and then press Command G, and that's sort of grouped all of these together. So if I've double clicked on here, you can see that this is basically my kit. So like I can see here that I've got all the different drum hits, and you can actually affect how each of these individually sound. So if I say, look at my snare and go, okay, so yeah, I'm like, you can see the waveform of each individual hit. So if I hear the snare, and I'm like, okay, that's okay, but it's a little bit too tinny. I can actually click here and say like filter. So I can pull this down in terms of the number of, so the frequency of hertz. So basically hertz is like the speed that something moves to make a sound, just in very, very layman's terms. So it's kind of like if something's vibrating at a certain speed, it's making a certain sound. So if I kind of pull this back, this is like putting like a filter. So if you've ever used a DJ mixer or something, this is like putting like a low pass filter on, because you can see here that I've got a low pass filter. So basically the low frequencies will still go through, but the high frequencies will be cut off, because you can see the shape here. If I actually want to cut off the low frequencies and only have the high, then I can change that there. This is a notch filter. There's a couple other things, but don't worry about those too much. Just low and high for now. So notch filter is kind of like for the mids. So maybe 1, 2, 3. So you can hear the difference now, hopefully. So let's go back to low pass. So I'll dial this right down just so it's really obvious, but like you can like hardly hear anything now when I hit that. Boost that up a little bit more. And then back to full. So you can kind of affect parameters down in the devices here as well. And like, that's kind of one of the hectic things about Ableton. Like it's cool, but there's so much shit you can do that it can be a little bit intimidating. So that's just kind of one thing there. Attack, decay, sustain, release as well, or the volume of the track you can change. But I won't go into that too much. The other thing that you can do, which is really cool, is, so this is a 909 core kit. So this is just one of the basic kits that comes with Ableton. If I'm like, that's cool. Actually, I really like 909 kits, so I like all these. But if you're like, oh, that snare really sucks, then I can go, all right, what else have we got? So search snares. These are not all snares, but okay. So say that I want this like really airy, sort of clappy snare. All I do is basically click and drag that down here. And then now if I look at this list here, that's replaced the snare that was in the standard kit. And so basically you can kind of build your own kits using what's called the drum rack. And I'll sort of talk about a little bit of audio. Like we've talked about pretty much just MIDI channels at the moment, but now we'll kind of talk about using audio and sort of sampling with audio as well, because that can kind of be really cool. And using the standard stuff, you can only get sort of so much. So, so I've got, let me just make sure everything's stopped. So I've got this sample, which is like the Winston's like Amen break, which is like probably the most famous break. So I'm sure you probably have like heard that before. Like it's your sort of standard breakbeat or jungle or drum and bass kind of use that sample as a starting point. And you can see here that I'm 124, so this is kind of slowed down. But you know, if I speed this up to like, I don't know, 164. Oh wait, I didn't warp the track. So basically warping a track, and this is kind of starting to get pretty tech as well. So I don't want to focus on this too much and confuse you guys, but basically warping a track means that it's changing an audio track's time signature to match the master tempo up here. So before it was 124, and I think this is 137.28. So that's what the actual clip that I've dragged in the speed is. But now I've hit this warp button and I've changed this to 164. So hopefully, so you can actually hear that now that's like, that's more of like a drum and bass or jungly kind of like speed. So that's like a super easy way to like take like, you know, if you're making jungle, you're making breaks, you're making anything, like sampling this in, warping it, and then actually changing the speed to sound like what you want to kind of sound like. There you go here. Jesse's gonna peace out. All good, man. Awesome. So yeah, that's kind of warping kind of number one. This track is actually pretty nicely warped, but sometimes what what might happen is you'll bring in a sample, and like I'm actually kind of ruining this one here because it was perfectly warped, but I'll play it now. It's kind of hard to tell because it's so quick, but basically, like we were talking about at the start, like this is beat 1, this is beat 2, 3, and 4. And this is this little thing here. This is like the snare and maybe the kick. So the snare's maybe here, this is the kick. That's the audio transient. So what that's saying is this is basically when the marker gets to here and it hits here, that's going to play the sound. And for it to be in time with everything else you're doing, you want this to be warped onto the grid. So you can see here that this is where the grid is, but this is where my beat is. So what I can actually do, so I'll kind of take that off. I can put my little cursor up here and you can see this little sort of chevron-y guy. If I double click, it'll turn orange. So I found the spot, and if I put my mouse over the timeline here, and then I can actually zoom. So I can see here that that's the transient there. I can zoom back out. And then all I do is basically click and drag, and then it sort of like warps the track in time with what I'm doing here. So like I'll just make it like massively out, and you'll kind of like hear what that sort of sounds like. So it's actually like the last tiny little bit here was like right. Let's try that again. So the last bit was like kind of better, but this first bit's like been massively stretched to make up for this here. So if I move this back, everything's on the grid. So like you can sort of hear how it changes when I kind of move it around. But if you're going to want to work with audio samples and actually like sampling vocals or sampling drums or anything like that into Ableton Live, I would definitely after this watch some tutorials on warping, because that's like a total another rabbit hole. There's like a lot of different techniques and different ways to do that. But basically warping in a nutshell is getting the track in time with your master tempo. So sort of just that's the long and the short of it. But that's kind of a total another chapter. So I might just bring the original back in here. So there's some other stuff that we can do. So this track's actually, I'm pretty happy that that's on the beat. The other thing that you can do to test is have the metronome on. So that's pretty much like on the beat. So then I'm happy to say that I've just done some work warping that, and that's ready to go. So now anything that I play this beat with will actually be in time. So let me just try, I think I've got, what did I have here? So this may not sound great, but so you can hear that the bit of audio is kind of, maybe not perfectly because it's maybe not a great clip, but it's at least in time with the audio that I've kind of created there. So that's kind of why warping audio is important. The other thing that you can do, which is really cool, one of my other favorite parts of Ableton is it's a device called Simpler. And I think on all versions, it should come with Simpler. And basically, this is like a simplified sampler. So if you've ever like looked at an MPC or something like that, like think about it, it's similar to kind of that. So what I kind of do is click and drag here. And this is an audio device. So it actually needs, because it works with audio as a file type, that needs to actually sit in an audio channel. So what I do here, so this is simpler. You can see here that this is asking me to drop my sample down here. So I'll click and drag on my Winston's sample, and then I'll kind of make that a little bit bigger. So you can see here that I've kind of got what I was looking at already. And so there's a couple of different ways to actually sample audio. So firstly, it's like classic. So if I use my, my keyboard, basically you can play a sample on a keyboard. So maybe I'll just make this bit. So that's the first note. So I'm actually just going up the keyboard. So I've gone A, S, D, F, G. So kind of like playing notes. So if I had another sample, which was like, so say like it was like a tom. So I've just like changed the sample to, oh wait, sorry. Gotta actually select the sample. Okay, so say this. So you can essentially just pull in any, like a drum sample, a vocal chop, or like, and basically play that like on a keyboard. That's why like having a MIDI keyboard is cool, because you can just pull in a sample, pull in a simpler, and then you've like really, really quickly been able to just, you know, create a new instrument out of any sample that you've pulled in. So that's kind of one way to sample, and this uses classic mode. So basically, wait, so classic mode, I'm holding down and then releasing. So that's only going to play for as long as I actually hold down my key. If I do one shot, so basically this is going to play like the sample continuously, even if I only press the key once. So if I re-trigger, then it will start again. But if I only press it once, it's going to play the entire sample. So the next one is slice, and this is a really handy one, and it's pretty hard to do on the computer, to be honest, which is why I kind of use my Ableton Push quite a lot, because the screen and it's got dials and it's really great for sampling. It's sort of similar to an MPC in that sort of aspect, but it's actually quite hard to sample just using like this with your computer. And a couple of things to look at here. Let me see, slice. So this is now, oh yeah, here we go. So this is said slice by transients. So basically this Ableton has kind of analyzed this track and said, you know, these are probably, and it's not always 100%, but it's normally pretty good. These are the transients. So these are the new kind of like beats, or there's something kind of happening. So these are all my slices here, and this has kind of done it automatically for me. The other options is do it by beat. So you can see like 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's chop that up by beat. Or I can say region. I don't really know what region means, but I've never really used that. Or I actually do manual sampling quite a bit, particularly if there's just like one drum kick in here, or there's one little sample of vocals or something. So I might just go, yep, I want this, and I want it to end there. Why is that not playing? I don't know why that's not playing, but anyway, that's what would happen, and it would just start here and just go dun 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 and just play. Maybe, oh fuck, I don't know what note that is. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of like manual sampling, but you can actually, that's why it's a little bit hard to do this on the computer, because I think there is a way to get other sample spots on here, but I don't know how to do it, because oh yeah, if I double click actually, so basically these two little loops here are saying, this is my, I want to use this part of a sample, and this is kind of important. Like this is a short sample, so it's not too bad, but if you've got like an entire track, like, you know, a 6-minute track, it's going to get really messy. So you might just want to loop off the region that you want to work with, and then go sample here, put another sample here, put another sample here. And then like when you kind of come to your MIDI keyboard, let me see if that'll play. I don't know what's happening. But yeah, basically you can kind of do manual sampling. So I'm going to clear all this and go back to transient and open that right back up. And then this is some cool shit that you can do with Ableton. Basically, if I right click once I've got my sample spots in place, and then I say slice to new drum rack. So I was kind of talking about the drum rack before. And basically now what this has done is, now this has chopped these up and put them on a drum rack for me. So I can go. And it's done like a pretty good job at like slicing up the sample. So I can basically make a kit out of an existing beat. So that's kind of one way to look at it. let me just take that back. The other thing you can do, which is really cool, is say like, I want to create a new MIDI track. So now this will like analyze the beat, and this will actually create like a MIDI track. So we were just working with audio, and now we're back to working with MIDI. And I don't know, maybe there's no instrument. I think there's an instrument, so it won't play. Oh yeah. So you can see there that it's like done an all right job. So essentially it's like, so if I want to move this up to this slice, and maybe like this will probably sound pretty crappy, but let's just kind of like mix up these samples a little bit. And like a lot of people that make sort of jungle breaks and stuff here, kind of, this is basically similar to what they'll do. They'll sort of cut up, the original, and then Josephine, to everyone, slicing sample with simpler, or also possible without simpler. Yeah, it probably is. There's also sampler, which is like another instrument within Ableton. Or let me see, if I open up the original here, I could, so say I only wanted to, so in a way, I'm sort of doing the same thing. So if I want to, and then I play this, maybe turn the loop off. So that's like kind of the same in terms of sampling, like a one-shot sample without simpler. But the reason why I like using simpler is you can like cut it to a drum rack, you can arrange it as MIDI, you can change the pitch and stuff like that. And it just gives you a lot more flexibility, because this here, and maybe there's another way to do it that I don't know, but like this here is basically, it is sampling, because you've basically got an audio track and you're taking a small section of it. And I'm sure you could even, like, you can transpose this here. So maybe let's just like loop that. Yeah, so like you definitely can sample in other ways. I just find the versatility of simpler is probably why I like it. Hopefully that answered your question, Josephine. C, cool, thanks. Awesome. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that all versions of Ableton come with simpler. Not 100%, but I'm pretty sure it comes with all of them. So if you are going to sample, like, you can basically do everything that you can with just working with audio, but it just gives you a lot more options. So this might not sound great, but I basically just cut it to a MIDI track here and just kind of mucked all of the notes around. So if we have a listen now, actually didn't sound horrible. So yeah, you can kind of see how easy it is to sort of rearrange a sample just using something like super simple like that with simpler. Let me see what else we got. And the other thing, yeah, if you do want to just create like your own kit. So kits don't necessarily have to only be drums, but if you come in here, and I think it's in instruments and drum rack. So I click and drag a drum rack in here. So this is now like an empty drum rack. So I could go through samples and go, hey, this is cool. I want that there. This is cool. So I'm kind of like building out my own kit of samples, but I don't really know what these all are. But so say I want, so I've got 3 samples of something in there. Yeah. Okay, so that was pretty weird, but yeah, so you can just sort of see how you can create your own little kit with the drum rack there, and that's real handy if you're like slicing stuff or just pulling in individual one shots or whatever you want to do. Drum rack is like super fun, particularly like if you want to have variations of a certain thing. So you might want to have like two different, you might only just want to have like one kick drum channel, but you might have two kick drums. So like a high with a little clip and then something deep and then maybe like a sub kick as well. Or you might have like some congas and you might want to pitch them differently. And then you can make like, with one conga sample, you can just create like 5 different notes of that same sample. And then you can create like a funky little kind of pattern around that. So yeah, that's why drum racks are pretty fun. Okay. Arrangement mode. So the other thing that I hadn't mentioned before, oh, sorry, I got another question. I have to go. Okay. Mwah. Thanks, Kim. Nice to see your face. I'm recording this stuff, so anyone that had to drop, I'll post the link for the rest of it. Cool. See ya. So the other thing that I will kind of talk you through, so some basic mixing and stuff. So these are all just the levels on each of your channels, so you can kind of do a little bit of mixing there. And then when you're actually kind of ready to record, you can either do it the way that I did it with sort of like clicking and dragging into these things, or what you can do is, so let me minimize this little demo here. So I'm going to hit record. So this basically is going to start recording after 4 beats. And then I'm going to launch this first scene. And then I'll kind of show you what happens after that. So. Okay, that should be enough. So I've basically just showed you what I did before, but this time I was actually recording. Now if I just hit stop and then I hit tab and tab over here, you can see that now that's actually recorded what I was actually just playing there in the session view into the arrangement view here. So that's kind of another way that I sometimes work. I'll kind of create scenes and sort of map out my track. So like, yeah, I want the hi-hat here with this. Oh, actually it doesn't sound great. I might move it to here, whatever. So you kind of plan out your track there, hit record, and then like launch scenes or do different things here, record them in here, and then I can go, actually, let's not start that until here. So it's just like a really quick way to sort of get some kind of structure down. It is a kind of another big piece is automation. So I won't really go into it too much, but basically, if you don't have these little drop downs here, if you press A, let me see. Or maybe I've got to turn my keyboard off. So you can see here that these little dotted lines appear and disappear when I press A. And what automation is, it's basically automating different parameters of a track. So for example, like the easiest one is like your volume, for example. So this at the moment is here and here. So say I want to, I think this is, I'll just solo this. I think this is my bass. Yeah, so that's my bass there. And so say I want to actually gradually fade that bass in, I can just click on this little line here and create like a little automation lane. So maybe I'll make it a bit more pronounced. So it'll be a slower fade. So now if I play it, oh wait, that's panning. So I want to actually do track volume. So put 2 little dots in here, start low and then get higher. So basically that means like when you're recording stuff in, you can automate things and you can kind of fade things or turn devices on or off, or like, for example, if I can go down to, I can see here that I've got a delay, and then I can go device on. So then device on. So delay only actually turns on once I get to that point in that clip. Wait. I know, it's kind of hard to hear, but yeah, that's basically the premise around how automation works. So that's probably like another massive topic to kind of go through. And maybe I'll like, after this, I'll kind of go back through the recording and just put some of the topics that might be good to sort of follow up on, and maybe watch a few YouTube videos and stuff, because this has probably been like a massive kind of overload for you guys. But just the last thing that I want to show is actually how to export your track. So this is obviously not like the best track. Let me just take this out. So that little bit that I recorded then, if I want to export that to something I can play outside of Ableton, what I basically do is just make sure that I've hit double stop here. So it's right back to 111, which is the start of the track. I don't know if you actually need to do this, but I always tend to. I just do like Control A and like highlight the whole track, and then Shift, Command and R, which is from the file menu here. I think it's export audio video. So now this comes up with all these things. Don't really worry about too much of the stuff here, because everything will sort of be set to default and you won't really need to change anything. The only thing here is you can choose what file type. So these are all lossless file types, so WAV, AIFF, or FLAC. I prefer exporting stuff in AIFF. So if you ever actually want to like DJ with it in a like a Pioneer record box or whatever, you can actually put some stuff in there and get a bit of info around it. So I don't know, I just think that works for me. And then basically you just hit export, save this to my desktop. Now this is just going to do, that's a pretty small track, so it's going to do that pretty quickly. Then if I look at my desktop, Ableton tutorial AIF. So now there's a file on my desktop. Double click that. Maybe my audio routing's not working because I'm routing Ableton. Oh wait, there we go. Yeah, so that's just exported that. And that's just playing in iTunes now. So that's kind of super quick. There's a bunch of other intricacies in terms of like mastering and compression and exporting your tracks and things like that, which I'm still kind of learning as well. I don't have them 100%, and it's kind of a continuous journey to get things sounding real crispy. But at the bare minimum, if you make it something that you're kind of happy with and want to share it, then yeah, that's a super easy way to kind of put something together and then just export that, and you can send it to your mates and whatever. Let me see. I think that's pretty much it. Everyone's probably exhausted from all of the, oh yeah, the other thing that I've just kind of mentioned, when you are like exporting stuff, like just make sure that you check your levels. Like anything, if you're DJing or, you know, listening to your stereo or something, if things are clipping, so like, no one sucks. So this is my master channel. So say like, you can see there it went red and it started to distort. So just like, make sure you keep that, I don't know, I generally try and keep that at least under 0, maybe like -6. But yeah, just making sure that you've got enough headroom on your track so it's not clipping and distorting and stuff like that, because that can be pretty easy to do. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much everything I kind of wanted to go through. Definitely a lot of stuff to take in. But I'll kind of post a few topics afterwards. And I'm also have been recording this, so I'll post the recording if you guys want to kind of look back over it. But any general questions? I think I got one question here. What's going on here? Amazing. Oh, you're welcome, Rudy. Yeah, man. Like if anyone has any questions, or like even after this, if you just hit me up, if you started to like have a bit of a play and you kind of get stuck or whatever, like, yeah, just hit me up. Like, happy to share what I know. Yeah, obviously there's still a ton of stuff to kind of delve into and kind of learn, but that hopefully is at least sort of a few things to kind of focus on. So you can kind of start making a few things, and then there's so much, you know, free stuff online that you can watch YouTube clips on and things like that to get more specific in certain areas. But I think basically if you, you guys in San Francisco, but yeah, basically if you just kind of understand, you know, devices, your different tracks, the difference between audio and MIDI, creating clips, how to create, like how to record, how to use the little pencil tool and just draw in sort of MIDI, and then how to arrange stuff in the arrangement view, and then how to export. Like just those little things will get you to, you know, make some kind of track at least, and then, you know, you can always build up from there. And I mean, yeah, I'm definitely still learning as well. And every track that you make hopefully is a bit better than the last. So yeah, guys, I mean, we're all locked in, so we've got plenty of time on our hands. So yeah, get creative. And if you guys want to like share anything that you've worked on in the next couple of weeks, like, yeah, be stoked to have a listen. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool, guys. Have a good night. Stay safe out there, or in there.
In there, yeah.
Thanks so much, Eric. This has been awesome.
No worries. All right, guys. Have a good night. Yeah, I'll catch you soon.
Good night.
Yes, thanks a
Bye.
lot.
Cheers. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.